Hi, Christoph. It's really pleasure to meet you here. And
hello.
And also, this interview is dedicated to the Pakistani World NGO Day. So let's begin.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm pleased to be part of this occasion.
My pleasure. So looking back to your life, what were your reasons to get involved in the NGO sector?
I guess for me, there have been a number of impulses, but one that sticks out are the wars in former Yugoslavia in the 1990s and being faced with the human suffering they caused. And I guess we may have that in common. When we are faced with challenges, we have to work out some responses. We feel like responding. And that's one of the marking experience that brought me to especially to the formal NGO sector. This response thing is a personal, we know that in a personal situation, but we also know it in the bigger issues where we need to face and improve the overall common good and to address urgent issues.
I see. That's awesome. That's awesome to hear. And this month, as we know, on 27th of February, across the globe, we will celebrate World NGO Day. So, so many people are basically, there's no question why we are celebrating that World NGO Day. But a couple of years ago, like many years ago, when I came up with this initiative and wanted to introduce that we have to celebrate International Day for NGOs, many people ask why. And I have this question to you. Why do you think it's important to celebrate World NGO Day?
Thanks for bringing that up. That's interesting. I will connect with these two words, challenge and response, that we have just had before.
Okay.
And we run into, when we are in front of a big challenge and try to come up with a consistent, solid response, there is the risk of getting stuck on issues, or even getting sometimes a feeling of being singled out.
I see.
Therefore, teamwork is so essential. And here with World NGO Day, we come up with this encouraging each other and showing that we can jointly be a force for good.
Right.
So that's a very brief answer to a huge question.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with your points. The other question I wanted to ask you, we all heard that there's different stories about the systematic problems concerning NGO rights and freedoms in Europe that happened in the past and also recently. And I was wondering, why are these problems happening in today's modern Europe and also world?
Right. Thank you. We can roll out the big carpet here. But I've tried to crunch the issue so as not, we could spend 2 days on going through the whole question you have brought up. But, civic rights are challenged. And even independent judiciaries are being undermined.
I see.
So let's step back and try to obtain an overview. I've got these 3 circles on the screen. States, and its various institutions. They are the corporations, the businesses. And that we have to remember, and that's new in the 21st century. corporations some of them have bigger budgets than states themselves.
I see.
So they are more powerful than states. And then there is the civic space, associations, NGOs, human rights, social needs, etc. And may I add, the human rights came up in the late 1940s in response to the enormous tragedies of dictatorship of the last century, of the world wars, and unprecedented genocides. So that's the origin of human rights. You know, it goes back. It has been a response to these horrific things from before.
I see.
So back to the overview here, and putting it all in a nutshell, if the three elements have their place and part to make society function properly for everyone, then all is okay. Now, this is extremely crunched, as I said, and there is the so-called stakeholder approach. With the stakeholder approach, we would have about 16 circles on the diagram here that need to be functioned and placed.
I see.
But we can put that aside and just bring it down to those three large stakeholders. So the point remains the same, whether many circles or just three overarching ones. If they all have a part in the equation, things work fine. But that's not always the case. Either the taking part is openly challenged, or we don't even notice how the balance is shifting and has changed the rules of the game without our awareness. So therefore, again, on the right-hand side, I'm just bringing system and little headlines into a big field about risks and threats to this equation that needs to be redefined every now and then. There can be the state capture of the civic space.
Wow. That's
one party rule, for instance, but brings that so quickly. But not only that, or then you have the corporate capture of the civic space. Basically, money decides everything. Or you have the corporate capture of the states.
Yeah.
With other words, a corporate budget is so large, any sort of rebalancing the state wishes to make doesn't pan out properly.
Yeah.
And of course, the fourth step is what we regretfully also know. We can have revolutions and wars. And let's face it, most often, all are the losers. There are no winners on the point four. So that's in very brief, in very broad terms, the challenges that we face. So you brought up a big question, and I've tried to be very brief.
Yeah, no, it's a good answer. And you mentioned as well about corporations. And since I've been involved in corporation sector, like business sector, I've seen these like patterns, you know, that what you mentioned happens in different countries, and it's like from one. It is alarming, you know, when we see the like from one hand, corporations like companies support or helps NGO sector, but from other hand, they impact and change and take advantage. And there's like a two, you know, it's very difficult to balance them, you know, because we see how it's what's happening in real situation. I was wondering as well, what is the conference of INGOs of Council of Europe role and involvement to tackle these problems in Europe? As a vice president of this institution, I would be delighted to hear your point of view.
Thank you. Can I just give a bit of framework of
Awesome. Yeah,
the Council of Europe and how here?
Of course, yeah.
So just an introduction of what the Council of Europe as a whole is, and then the Conference of International NGOs.
Yeah.
You see the green circle there. It is just one little bit. And let's be frank, the one with the most precarious funding whatsoever. Anyway, so Council of Europe is the older, bigger, and economically poorer international organization in Europe. It is not the European Union, whose mandates are economic and financial. Council of Europe has 47 member states, and it has grand principles that are mentioned here in the blue bar. 1, human rights. 2, democracy. 3, rule of law. And the institutions here are in the white bar below, the Committee of Ministers. You would like, you could say they are the bosses after all. It is an intergovernmental organization. Then there is the Parliamentary Assembly. Quite interesting, there is a conference of local and regional authorities. And I can imagine that must be quite interesting. If you are a mayor or a manager of a local city and you meet fellow mayors from right across the continent, that must be a really good platform.
Exactly.
Then what may be known worldwide a lot better is the European Court of Human Rights. That's another institution. This is also an amazing result coming from those horrific events in the last century.
I see.
As a response to them. And then there is the Commissioner for Human Rights. And then comes the Conference of International NGOs. That's where we sit. And our international NGOs, it is called the participatory status. In other words, we can participate, but understandably, with an international intergovernmental organization, we cannot vote, of course not. But we can bring our points.
And it's important as well, probably, to add that INGO conference is not separate NGOs that is part of this big family, but it is like under the umbrella of Council of Europe. So like you showed in the example, because some of the individuals, people think that INGO conference is something like, initiative or like a charity, a non-profit organization, like that, like Civicus, but it's not that, it's something else. That's why I'm glad that you can explain that today and elaborate, more what is really INGO conference.
Okay. Should I pick up from there?
Sure, no problem.
So basically, there are 6 main themes. Civic participation, and I will go into detail about that later on.
Sure.
We have also developed a dialogue mechanism to shift situations from a polarized to a participating situation. Then we have developed a whole arm regarding NGO legislation, because that is an interface with state governments. How does the NGO legislation look like in a particular country? And then there is the gender equality issue, which we keep having to remind us about. The next point is human rights and business. and this is what you have brought up just before.
Yeah.
With the, how to say, specific weight of the sectors, going back to the three circles of before, continuing to change, we also need to reset the checks and balances so that there is proper due process for everyone involved.
Right, yeah.
And then we also have the whole issue of migration, of course, big issues. And for those of you with smartphones, there is the QR code that if you take it, you can open the Conference of INGO web pages and find out more. There is a lot more detail, and maybe we can select a few items and go into more details if you agree.
Well, yeah, it's very good that you have the codes that anyone can just grab the phone, you know, and get into, like, dive into resources. And I think it's very important in today's advanced and technology world. Yeah, I would like to learn more about, let's say, if you talk about conference of INGOs, like what is the terms and conditions to join INGO conference, and if international organizations, let's say, that are based that are developing, growing in Pakistan and would like to open a branch in, let's say, in Strasbourg or Brussels, would that be possible for them to join INGO conference?
The conditions for joining is the prerogative of the General Secretary of the overall organization. And we, as members of the Conference of International Organizations, our organizations have submitted their will to participate. And on the website, you see the details. Basically, one needs to be organized in half a dozen of the Council of Europe member states.
I see.
So it is basically about the continent here, above all.
Exactly. So,
but there are platforms of exchange, say like the charters of the Council of Europe or the conventions. They are open to countries beyond Europe for signature and adoption. There are interfaces that go beyond the confines of the Council of Europe member states. But the Conference of NGOs, INGOs itself, you do need to be predominantly within those 47, which isn't bad.
Exactly.
Well, it's only about a quarter of the UN, but still.
Exactly, and quite powerful part of EU and United Nations. But talking about Council of Europe as well, and INGO conference, like, it's very important as well for those who don't know geographics. We are talking about Europe. We are not talking about Europe Union. So that means it's out of Europe Union. There's some other countries that are part of Council of Europe within Europe. So because sometimes
may I just say the figures? It's not the 27,
exactly.
It's the 47.
Exactly, that's fine. So some of because some of international foreigners, that are from let's say states or from Asia, they see sometimes they kind of don't get it. What is Europe Union and what's Europe, and or Europe is Europe Union, or Europe Union is Europe. It's like why, where's, but it's completely different things. So, but you highlighted and spotted right things, and shared very important information. And so in that case, I would like to ask you, what do you think the future of NGOs in Europe could look like in next few years? What you vision? So since you're working within this like institution, and you have probably you heard and met so many NGO leaders and heard so many stories, you know, and you probably have that vision. What is our future in Europe?
Right. Let me go forward then.
Sure.
To this, yes, what is the future? I think we have to face the fact that we will have continued polarization within societies and between states. This will not go away very soon. In response, however, more teamwork between various civil society actors can come up, as well as the new movements that are spontaneous movements like, you know, Friday for the Future and others. And together with the established NGOs, there can be an increased teamwork. And this trend of increased teamwork, I would say, may well continue properly, because some of the challenges cannot be met by states alone. They are past the original, traditional brief of what the state is responsible for. Like the environment, you know, a poisonous cloud, you in your country of origin, you know, when the Chernobyl went off, the clouds brought the bad stuff right over back to your country.
Exactly.
Although Chernobyl was, I don't know how many 100 miles away.
Exactly.
So therefore, there are things that are, you know, transnational, and that is our opportunity for teamwork and to help provide avenues for solutions.
Interesting.
But I would reiterate, the context may well be quite challenging.
Right, because like you mentioned, right, there's possible new movements gonna come out in the near of like far future, something that we probably might feel that could happen in, you know, in this today's world, or something that, you know, we can't predict even. So like you correctly spotted out that like climate change movement, or there's other like small local movements, for example, in France, Yellow Belt, or, you know, there's so many of those. There's the reasons why they are coming out and why they are like raising awareness. And some of those movements turn into NGOs that become as a non-profit organization to protect those rights and stand for the people rights, you know, and raise awareness of that cause that they are fighting for. So, and it's very interesting. So